This is the big day out. That's what we always used to call it. So we've kept the name the same, but it's only 2 hours. And we are aiming to help those people who lead others do children's ministry and who do children's ministry themselves. So I think that's why you're in the room. If you weren't told why you had to be here, you were just sent. I just want to say welcome. This is going to be the best 2 hours ever. We're going to be finding out together what is children's ministry. The way we picked this title is we thought it is possible that for the first time in a generation or more, we have a blank sheet of paper to decide what is children's ministry. For the first time, we've spent a year doing either nothing formally or very little. So it could be that now is a moment where you're thinking, well, let's get out a blank sheet of paper. Let's start scribbling on it and let's see what we come up with. So this is our effort to say, what are some essentials of a blank sheet of paper for what is children's ministry? It might be, alternatively, that you yourself are new to it. You have been persuaded, you have pondered during lockdown, discovered you can serve, you could do more, you could play a part, you could play a leading part in children's ministry. So you're new to it, you've come along. There may be 100 other reasons. There may at least be 80 or 79 other reasons why you're here or what you're aiming for. But what we're going to try to give you is those essentials of children's ministry. So however new you are to it, however old you are to it, I really hope you don't feel out of your depth. And we're going to, the way this is going to be structured is nothing lasts longer than about 5 to 7 minutes. We've got a different range of people speaking. We have got some time. We've got 3 breakout groups. The intention and the plan, in fact, we've got 4. Look at that. If you've been along to some of our other big day outs, some of the past ones we've been doing, we have tended to be throwing ideas at you for Easter, for Christmas. It's been deliberately manic, deliberately brief. This one, we're going to slow down a little. We're going to try to give time for thinking. We've deliberately got 4 breakout group times to give time for discussing, because that is for you in a way a breakout group can, the best it can, to get to ask your questions, to get to ask your complaints, to get to ask your disagreements or state your disagreements violently and strongly. That's what a breakout group is for. And I hope some of that will come back to the bigger group in the best way we can manage, to hear what they are, to respond to them, to understand them. All those normal things are going to happen. There is a chat function. You don't need that introduced to you. If you just want to throw in a link, throw in a comment, throw in a talk that explains this far better than the person who's speaking at the moment does, then just throw that in there. We are going to try to edit that chat down, not to remove the things we disagree with, but probably just to remove the, sorry, is he on mute again? And then we'll email that out so that you have some record of that. So you don't have to try to write out www.https://wherehaveigone.com. We'll send that to you. I think that's broadly it. Throw questions, throw thoughts, throw insights into chat. There'll also be a time just for you to unmute and have a shout. That's available. Why don't we make a start in a different way? I'm in a moment going to open up Ephesians 4. So if you have a Bible, slide it to the table. If you suddenly realize you don't have a Bible and you're feeling very awkward, why don't you pretend you're getting a cup of tea, or just sort of make some universal sign for I'm just popping to the loo. So you could get a Bible. We're in Ephesians 4. I'm going to close my eyes, which might be the ideal time for you to reach for a Bible. Okay, we're going to pray. Let's go. Father, I thank you that in every real sense, we are brothers and sisters. We don't know each other. We don't know many of each other. And the sadness is this is not a normal way for Christians to meet together. We'd love to encourage one another. We'd love to share stories. We'd love to minister to one another and enjoy fellowship together. We pray, Father, that to the best of our ability, we would allow that to happen in our breakout groups, here as we speak and here as we listen. Would we be as brothers and sisters to one another? speaking the truth in love, building up your people for works of service. Be gracious to us, Father. Would we convince us that because of Christ, we have no reason to feel nervous, nor do we have reason to feel proud. Amen.
Amen.
I'm in Ephesians 4, and I am going to be starting at verse 11. Amy, do you want to unmute yourself and read Ephesians 4, 11 to 16 for us? Thank you.
What would you do if I didn't have a Bible? Ephesians 4:11, did you say?
11 to 16.
Oh, hang on. Sorry, bear with.
We're all finding it together, Amy.
Okay, let's go. So Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors and teachers to equip his people for works of service, so that the body of Christ may be built up until we reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. Then we will no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves and blown here and there by every wind of teaching and by the cunning craftiness of people in their deceitful scheming. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is, Christ. From him, the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work.
Nice, Amy. I would love just to look at this passage back to front with you. And this is our one go in this session of really getting into the Bible for the Bible's definition of what is children's ministry. And I'm just going to take these 5 verses back to front. And I'm just going to start with the end, which is verses 14 to 16, what we all want, which I realise is a bit of a stretch, isn't it? To start off by saying, I'm going to tell you, a group of people who mostly I don't know that well, what you want. But let's see in verse 14 to 16 if this is what we all want. We don't want any longer to be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves and blown here and there by every wind of teaching and by the cunning and craftiness of people in their deceitful schemes. It turns out we don't want to be children. We don't want to be children. There is a goal, which I think is practically universal, that parents don't want their children to be children. They don't want their children to be tossed back and forth by waves. It is a universal sign of parenting. You don't need any parenting course for parents to get that the goal of parenting is that one day their children won't be children and their children won't be tossed around by the waves of life. It is a universal goal of parenting that parenting exists for parenting to no longer exist. The purpose of parenting is to not need parents. The purpose of parenting is the day you drop off your children, slightly teary-eyed, leave them behind and drive away thinking this will probably be all right. Which I agree, if you're dropping off an 18-year-old son and you discover he can't yet boil an egg, as I remember one 18-year-old, his mum just found lots of half-cooked eggs in the sink for failed attempts. You know, so a goal is they could actually feed themselves for more than 6 hours. So this passage is saying it's exactly like that. The universal plan God has for all people is that one day they won't be like children tossed around. What we want for the children in our churches, whether we are parents or leaders of leaders or church leaders, is that our children grow up not being children, not tossed around, not hurt by, I don't want to be your friend. You've got no friends. Learn some swear words. Don't hang out with us. Sit on your own. Go back to the classroom. You're confused. Do you still go to church? Must be so boring. The goal is that our children learn not to be tossed around by the scheming of others, by the hurtful words of others. That's what we all want. To be here today, to have given up 2 hours, means you want better for children. Thank you. Brilliant. What a group of people to have together. A group of people who are going to give up precious time so that children are no longer children. So that children are no longer children, and so that as adults, they are no longer children. Because this is Christian. This is claiming we will no longer. The book of Ephesians, the Bible, has an argument for how adults aren't going to be like children. Because we have the rock we build on. The rock, not a rock, the rock. Listening and obeying Jesus's words. That's what we all want for our children. To be told the way, definitively, definitely, objectively, how not to be blown around by waves. What we all want then, verse 15, instead, speaking the truth in love, will grow to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. The book of Ephesians says that from the dawn of creation, for all eternity, there is one plan to bring all things under Christ. That's what we want for our children, to be part of that body, to speak the truth in love. I heard from a friend who's a youth worker that he was running a session on sexual ethics. You know, who'd you sleep with? Who'd you go out with for his youth group? And at one point towards the end, a 16-year-old girl put up her hand and said out loud, bravely, "Can I just be clear what you're saying? Are you saying we shouldn't tell our friends that everything they do is good? Are you saying we shouldn't affirm our friends in whatever they choose to do?" She was processing that for the first time. A 16-year-old young woman was processing for the first time that just because their friends do it, she doesn't have to tell them they're making a great decision. Because she is hearing her youth worker speak the truth in love to her. As Christians, we believe there is value in speaking the truth in love, even when it disagrees with every other voice our children are hearing. Even when they can't yet process it because it is so alien to what they see around themselves. But the joy, perhaps, of children's ministry is they just lap it up. They just want to hear the truth. They'll discuss it. They'll talk about it. And as we'll hear later, even when you have those in the room who aren't Christians, who are children, they do too. They take it at face value. You're an adult. You care for them. You're telling them the truth, apparently. Let's talk about that. And then finally, from him, the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work. There will be a day, maybe it's already happened to some of you if you've been doing children's work for a while, when those children you've cared for, taught the Bible to, taught truth in love, are taller than you. And the great joy of joys is when they're not just taller, but they are this picture. They are part of God's immovable, solid body. They tell you of how they go on in Christ. I remember he was in his year out. He was 19 or 20. He had to drop out of uni because of mental health issues. So that was the first part of the story he told me. I'd already recognized him as a 13-year-old I last saw at a summer camp. His face hadn't changed, it was just a bit bigger. So the first two things I worked out about him was I'd had him on a summer camp with me for 4 consecutive summers, which was enough for me to love him. He told me he'd dropped out of uni for mental health problems. My heart sank. Then he told me, "But I know the Lord has me." That awkward moment when as an adult man you want to cry in front of another adult man, because you realize he's all right. It's not the plan he wanted, but he's all right. He has Christ and he's decided that's all he needs. And he's on a year out with a Christian organization because he knows that's the best way to be put back together, to go back to uni. Talking about it now, I'm incredibly moved. That is the story of meeting those who you used to love as children, who are now taller than you, stronger than you, and this picture. They are part of that whole body, joined together, held together by every supporting ligament, growing and building itself up like an adult man or woman, strong, able, in the prime of their life. That's the picture of God's church. That's what we all want. You're following it so far. Children who are not tossed around by the waves of every deceitful word they're told, instead told the truth in love by you and those you train, so that they grow up to become a part of God's strong, healthy body, immovable. That, I put to you, brothers and sisters, is what we all want. That is the goal of children's ministry. What is children's ministry? To be this. Our goal, the goal of children's ministry is not children. Our goal of children's ministry are those strong adults who look forward to eternity with their Lord, who left us long ago, who have forgotten our names, but remember a little of our love and the words we spoke in truth. Well done, brothers and sisters. That's our goal. Secondly, the wonder. Every time I share screen, I almost leave the meeting, which I always think is the worst thing you could possibly do. Secondly, finally, how are we going to get there? If we all want it, how are we going to get there? Now, I'm quite excited by what's about to happen. This could work. We're going to go to a visual. Are you ready? Let's see if this can work. Okay, verse 11. So Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, and the pastors and the teachers. We're wondering how this could go. So in here, we have Bible people. That's what this list is, Bible people. So you spotted in that list, we had apostles and we had prophets, those people who wrote the Bible. But then we also, the list carries on to pastors and teachers, to Sunday school leaders. These are Bible people, Sunday school leaders of leaders. Bible people are there. Christ has given them to the church. And what do they do? To equip, verse 12, his people for works of service. To equip God's people. We're going to equip God's people. So we're clear so far? Bible people, out the Bible, teaching the Bible, normal people, equipping God's people for works of service. So out the bottom comes works of service. Look, this is the good one. Are you ready for this? This is going to blow your mind. I can stamp hearts everywhere. This is visuals happening in front of your very eyes. I can even change the color of the love hearts. Oh no, I can't. Disaster. Apparently you can't. Who knew? Okay. So do you see that big plan? Bible people, including Sunday school, including leaders, equipping God's people. So the crucial thing is that down here, we have parents and other Sunday school leaders. So some of you are those Sunday school leaders, and some of you are the leaders of leaders, and some of you are the parents. But do you see what's going on? Is that those Bible people are equipping the parents and Sunday school leaders for works of service amongst the children. The children are loved as a work of service. by the parents and the Sunday school leaders who have been equipped by Bible people. Okay? Verse 13, middle of verse 12, so that the body of Christ may be built up until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. So to gain that knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, this is the last hard bit to understand. To become mature, what it means is that these parents and Sunday school leaders, you discover that you move up through the magic of this visual to the top box to join the Bible people. The parents and the Sunday school leaders of our church get to sit in the same box as the apostles and the prophets, so that the children are equipped for works of service, so that in time they are learning how to use their skills and gifts to serve others, the Christians and the not Christians. And it's obvious, isn't it, that the final place we all reach, this glorious utopian heavenly nirvana, for real, is when children have become the Bible people with the apostles and the prophets and are equipping God's people for works of service. I don't know what you call an upside down fountain, but that's what this is, where everything goes up. That is only to say, finally, if the goal of children's ministry is that they're no longer children, that they're not tossed by the waves, the way we do that is by Bible people equipping for works of service. We're going to hear today, how do we equip Sunday school leaders for works of service? How do we equip parents for works of service so that all children are being served with Christ to become part of what we all want, this solid body of Christ? We are not in the business of entertainment. We are not in the business of amusement. We are not in a childcare business. We are in the equipping business. We are in the discipling business. We are in the works of service business. That diagram is now going, so I hope you've managed to get the full extent of that visual. That's blown your mind, hasn't it? You've never seen a whiteboard on Zoom used quite like that. We are now going to go straight to our breakout groups, if only to breathe deeply and say, I have no idea what just happened to me. Go to your breakout groups. My suggestion is this: introduce yourselves to each other. You're going to do this 3 more times after this. Who are you? Where are you from? Why don't you tell each other one encouragement? Is there an encouragement in children's ministry? Is there an encouragement with the children in your church, the families in your church? Is there an encouragement for you at the moment? It doesn't even have to be about children. And if you had time, and I doubt you will, maybe you could just ask one another, what did you take away from that session? Things are going into the chat. I'm sure it's brilliant. Someone was worried that the Sunday school teachers weren't going to be in the Bible box. Well, welcome to that. That's the sort of crisis and dilemma that this session is going to give you. We're going to leave you on the cliff edge regularly. Where will they end up? Very good. Thank you, Victoria, for liking that. Now, we are going to go straight now to Amy. If you had questions that have come up already, I doubt they have because we didn't have long enough, but just scribble them down or put them in the chat. There'll be moments later when we find out if there's things that have come out of groups, okay? But for the moment, we're going to go straight to Amy, who is going to unmute herself now. Amy, just tell us in a sentence what you told the rest of your group. Who are you? Where are you? And then tell us about people and not events.
Oh, I think I was too busy talking to other people in my group, but anyway, never mind. So I'm Amy. I live in Liverpool. I work for Faith in Kids as a writer, and I'm involved in children's ministry in my church. And I'm going to talk to you about people and not events. I'm going to start, the fell tips are out. I'm going to start with an overview of what families have learnt during lockdown. Are you ready? Next slide, please. So during lockdown, this is my graph. It's deeply researched. This is activities that families have been engaged in, and this is the time along the bottom. So as you see, March 2020, this is when the number of activities we were doing in our family increased. Here, and I have marked when mass baking began, and walking and going out for daily exercise and banana bread. And then as time has gone on, lockdown number 2 and lockdown number 3 has made, we're fed up of going out for walks. We've had enough of baking. We don't want to watch any more films or eat any more popcorn. And even at this point, lockdown 3, I could no longer persuade my children that another nature walk was a good idea. So I think in summary, here's my initial findings. Initial findings of what families learned during lockdown. We need to stay active. We need to keep learning. We need to keep busy. We need a colour-coded timetable. We need good Wi-Fi. We need devices. We need to bake. We need lots of walks and bike rides. Those were our initial findings. As time went on, it became very clear that what we really needed was people and Jesus. So by the time we've all had enough of one another and things have gone wrong and we started to struggle and the arguments are finished and we can't think of anything else to do, in my family, we were all entirely clear that we really needed Jesus and we really needed people. So what does that mean for children's ministry? Well, as somebody who's been involved in organising and running children's ministry for years, the tendency that we have is similar. So we say, imagine your church website and the What's On for Families page, or imagine when somebody says, and why is having a children's worker important for a church? You want to produce a ta-da! Well, let me just tell you what I do. And let me just tell you what's on for families. And look, there's messy church and there's Zoom quizzes and there's barbecues and there's pizza nights and there's a toddler picnic and there's a Zoom quiz and there's a holiday Bible club and we do a thing in September, and now don't even get me started on the Nativity and the Easter. My events page is all singing, all dancing and covered in stickers. And I think over the last year, we've realised, oh man, I can't deliver half of that. And I think we've had to learn how to do things very differently. And we've risen to the challenge, so well done. But also, we have become clear that what we need is Jesus. And what we need to be giving families is Jesus. Let me tell you a story of what that's looked like in my home. So my son, at the start of lockdown, learned to make stuff out of pallet wood. He learned to do gardening. He learned to argue with me over online schooling. He learned to ride his bike. He's got excellent at cricket, but he's also learned to be anxious. He's also learned to have panic attacks. He's also learned that he needs to be busy. He's also learned to really, really struggle. He's also learned to pray with his mum when he's afraid. He's also learned to talk to others about what's going on. I can find him clubs to go to. I can find him sport to keep him busy. I can find him people to talk to about his fears who will help him think positively. What I need the church to do is read the Bible with him. What I need people to do is love him, talk to him and tell him how God has an answer to suffering, how God has a future, how Jesus is with him to help him, that there is a reason to carry on. I need somebody to read Psalm 23 with him and tell him, though you've walked through tough times, Jesus has never left your side and he is taking you somewhere wonderful. That is what our kids need. That is what we need to give them. That's what we need to help families do. I can do my bit as a mum. His dad can do his bit as a dad. We need church to come alongside us and give our kids Jesus too, to be another voice who's saying the same thing, who's pointing to the same Saviour. So, in summary, what do we need? Here's my statement. We need Jesus, we need people, and that's how we decide if we need the event. So as you're planning children's ministry going forward, as you're thinking, what is going on the schedule? What are we going to put in? What are we going to shout about? What are we going to put our energy into? As a mum and as a kids worker, let's try and do it this way. Let's be clear. Our families and our children need Jesus. Our families and our children need others. They need to know that they're part of a family, that we're all together going in the same direction. And if what you're planning helps them know, gives them Jesus, gives them people, then get it in the schedule. Messy church, barbecues, toddler picnics, stickers on Sunday, they all might happen, but they need to happen because we've done this process first. Need Jesus, need people, then need the event. My 3-part slogan.
And Amy, last question, thank you. Let's imagine someone walks up to you soon and says, but Amy, the plan is empty. Amy, when will you start the club where we stick stickers, arrange flowers and hit nails into bits of wood? Tell me what you're going to say to that, Amy.
I think you know your families and your church, and if you don't, that's part of the problem. So you are going to know what they need. And I think a massive thing over the last year, which almost segues into what we're talking about next, is that the conversations about faith and the conversations about struggles and the conversations are happening in the family because it's difficult for them to happen anywhere else. That's where we want them to be. So as children's ministry workers, we want to be supporting that conversation to happen. We want to tee it up to happen. We want to give families the best possible chance of being able to talk to their kids in the week about how Jesus makes a difference here and their kids are struggling.
Amy, thank you so much. Smashed it. Thank you. And as if this is a perfectly planned event, I'm now going to ask Victoria to unmute herself. And Victoria, start talking.
Hello. Yeah, I feel like Ed and Amy have basically said most of what I was going to say for the next 8 minutes, which is fantastic, isn't it, when that happens? So thanks for that. My name is Victoria Beach. I run a small organisation called God Venture, which is all about inspiring families in their faith at home. So yes. Partnering with parents, that has often been, as children's workers, and I speak to somebody who's worked as a children's worker in a church, it feels like it's an extra thing that you have to do as well as organising the timetable. So at this point, when we are perhaps starting with a blank sheet or perhaps questioning what we're going to put on or what we're going to transition back to, I think it's a really good time to ask the question, where is our priority with partnering with parents? Why should we bother doing that? Is that something that we need to bring more into our focus? Why should we partner with parents? We should partner with parents because parents are the main disciplers of their children. Parents have the biggest influence on their children's lives. Research has shown that even teenagers who are officially rejecting everything that their parents do and say and lifestyle values that their parents try to persuade them are good, still, for them, their parents are the most influential people in their lives. And for those of us who, well, all of us, I think, I haven't seen anybody under the age of 18 here, all of us who have grown up and have moved on from that childhood into our own lives, we all spot those things, don't we, that we do, that our parents did, that we do kind of accidentally, because we have to actually intentionally choose to do something else if we're going to be different from our parents. The other thing is, of course, that's because God has set it up that way. And Deuteronomy 6 talks about that when God gives the law to Moses. He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul. Love him with all your strength. The commandments I give you today must be in your hearts. Make sure your children learn them. Talk about them when you're at home. Talk about them when you walk along the road. Speak about them when you go to bed. And speak about them when you get up. Now, all of those places where those conversations are supposed to be happening are not places where children's workers or children's leaders, reverends, anybody who's in the Bible group is except parents. It's only the parents. Now, and to be honest, if as a children's worker or as a reverend, you are with children when they go to bed and when they walk along the road and when they get up, then we maybe have some issues with how you're running a church. Yeah, it shouldn't be a constant sleepover. That's a little bit weird. These are conversations that happen in normal life in our families. And that's where Deuteronomy 6 says those things are supposed to happen. So for me, this is all about us discipling the disciplers. So to admit that actually we don't have the biggest influence in children's lives, but we do know who those influencers are. How can we influence those influencers? Recently, I decided that I needed some new clothes. We had a massive financial crisis last year in our family, and so I haven't bought any clothes for about 5 years. And I decided that the leggings with holes in really needed to hit the bin. And I don't know about you, but we haven't been out shopping for like ever, and so we haven't accidentally bought clothes. I looked at my wardrobe, and my wardrobe was basically brown and black and dark green. And I'm not that kind of person. I'm just not a dark green, black kind of person. And all of my friends were like, no, you're very bright. Your like wardrobe's really bright. I was like, no, it actually isn't. That's just what I am like. So what I've been doing is investing in things like this, in things that are so that my clothes represent my personality, so that when I see you, that you get who I am. Just even if I was on mute, you'd still get who I am. And I think that's one of the things that we need to do when we want to influence influences, is that we need to be intentional and authentic Jesus followers. We need to be people who exude who we are, so that when we walk alongside people, when we see them at the school gate, or when we bump into them as they're dropping off children, or if they're, the 6 meters away in a meeting or whatever, that some of the Jesus bit of us, the bit of us that's most like God, rubs off on them and is easily visible and catchable from us. That involves being intentional about what we do. Like I'm being intentional about buying pink earrings. In fact, I didn't buy them. My daughter made them. She's 9. They're amazing, aren't they? I'm so chuffed. But we have to be authentic. So I'm not wearing this because I want to be a sunny, happy person. I'm wearing these clothes because I am. And for most of you, you're thinking, Victoria, I could never wear yellow. It's just not my colour. And yellow and pink, frankly, don't go together. I'm not going to be doing that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we should all be authentic to who God has made us. People are really quick to catch on to us when we're not authentic. So being really what you are. I've been thinking about this and thinking about the Christians that I know and what attribute, what characteristic of God I get from them when I'm with them. So I'm friends with a guy who is a chaplain at Birmingham Children's Hospital. So that's quite a serious place to be. Most kids who are there have got something quite badly wrong with them. The children often stay there for weeks and months on end because they're so poorly. And he runs the chaplaincy there. But he has such a sense of God's peace in him that it comes out of him, and he doesn't talk about it at all. It's not something I've ever really heard him speak about. But when I'm with him, I always come away from meetings in a children's hospital full of the peace of God. I've got another friend, Naomi, who is really, really joyful. She's just something that she values in her life and that she chooses and she opts into, and that you come away with any meeting that if you met her, you would come away feeling light and bubbly and as if you'd eaten a massive bar of chocolate, because she's just a bubbly, joyful, fun person to be with. So we need to find the authenticness, the authentic thing that God has made us that's like him, and let that thing out, and be intentional about finding ways to let it out. And if you don't know what your thing is, maybe you can chat with the people who in your group, or with the people who are in your church and more likely to be able to tell you, or your friends. Ask them, what 3 words would you describe me with? Ask 10 friends, what 3 words would you give? And then look at the words and see which words come up. And I guarantee you that there'll be, if those people know you, there'll be 2 or 3 words that come up that lots of people say about you. And that's the buzz that God has given you to spread among the people that you mix with. When we're inspiring parents, I think one of the best things we can do is to communicate with them. So if you are planning stuff to do with children, if you're running a group or you're doing an online thing, or you're doing a family event, make sure that you communicate with parents what you are doing with the children. Preferably do it in such a way that they can share in it. To disciple someone, when Jesus called his disciples, he didn't call them to come to all of his meetings over a period of 3 years. He called them to come and live with him. And so they saw how he lived and what it was like. And so we need parents to experience the sorts of things that we're doing with children. So if you're doing if you're teaching your children's work to chat and catch, you might want to invite the parents into a session to do that, or send them home with a video. My friend Naomi, who is full of joy, one of the things our church did to really facilitate what she was doing and what she was like in her family was we sent home playlists of the worship songs that we were using in the children's work. So we would pick which songs we were going to use over the next 6 months, and we put them together in a playlist. I did this back in the day of CDs. So we used to burn CDs and send them home, but you could just send it with a click, couldn't you, on an email list now on Spotify or a YouTube playlist, and just share it with the parents so that they can have it on in the house, so that you're sharing what you're doing. And the other thing I feel like in terms of partnering with parents is, coming from it as a children's worker, I definitely have ideas about what I think parents should be doing. And actually, if we're going to partner with them, we need to find out what they need, what they are looking for. And as Amy was saying, her son, and I'm sure lots of us who are parents, have seen the increase in anxiety and fear in our children over the last year. And so lots of parents, particularly this week's Mental Health Week, isn't it? Lots of parents are looking for something that doesn't look like Jesus. So they're not saying, please teach me, how can I give my children Jesus? What they might be looking for is, please teach me how I help my children to be less anxious. We know that the answer to that is people and Jesus, yeah, because Amy's already told us, yeah, the answer is people and Jesus, yeah. But we can come alongside them and help them, partner with them in what they are wanting for their children, using some of the resources we have. And I come on to resources last because I'm a resources person. I make resources. My first thing would always be, let's get loads and loads of resources and give them to the parents, you know. But for me, that's got to be our last thing. I think we should be resource curators. Be a resource collector. And I encourage you as children's leaders, collect resources, collect your own library of stuff, know what's out there, have documents on your phone with links that you can send to people, so that when you have a conversation with someone and they say, my 8-year-old son's really struggling with anxiety, any ideas what I can do? You can send them a link. You can give them a Facebook page to join. You can lend them or give them the book that you've got. And in that way, you're partnering with them rather than coming with your own agenda. And I think it has to be both ways, doesn't it? So we do come with things that we want to give and to share with them, but we also want to be able to resource and partner with them. Can I just quickly show you a resource? So I make resources for families to do things at home. Ed has asked me to do this. I'm not just doing it sneakily, honestly. So this is something that came out this week. I've been making these since this time last year. So this time last year, I had most of my resources were books, and I realized what families needed was something that was much more accessible, much more easy. So this is a mini magazine. It's A5, and it comes with a whole load of stuff that falls out of it. And it has 12 activities to explore one psalm. So it's just, when I say it's a mini mag, it's literally, that's the inside and that's the back cover. That's it. Okay. It also opens up into the middle. You get a poster. And you also get all of these postcards. So this is the psalm on a postcard. And then we have a psalm bingo game, which is really mega fun. My kids, you can imagine, because I run God Venture, my kids were always like, God Venture stuff. Oh, mummy, please go away. Stop making us test out the God Venture stuff. You know what it's like. And this, they actually enjoyed playing and wanted to play again, which is like, that's a great review for me, from my children. So the bingo game is, what you do is you make a spinner. You've got a little spinner that you can make. It's got 8 sides. You spin the spinner, whichever number it lands on. You use your psalm postcard and you read out the number. So you might like spin it. Let's get number 2. Psalm 121 verse 2 says, my help comes from the Lord, Jesus. He is the maker of heaven and earth. And then everybody looks on their bingo card, and everyone's got the same words on their bingo card, but in a slightly different order. So you then look for the words in that verse. You have to pick one word that you've heard, cover it with a counter. And then the goal is to get bingo, you have to get a line going across or going down. And so you keep spinning, and you'll find that your spinner starts to bend in one direction. So you get verse 6 a lot. You have to keep spinning it and making it sit up. But as you do that, you'll probably end up reading Psalm 121 about 8 times. Probably.
Victoria, how can we get this?
You can get this. You can get this half price, because I'm just really generous and excited about it. It came out this week. You can get this on my website. It's godventure.co.uk. I'll put a link in the chat.
Thank you.
If you put in the code Faith in Kids, you will get it half price. And you get another one for free to send to a friend.
Thank you, Victoria. I noticed that it's on Psalm 121, which is the most read psalm in my Bible in lockdown. It's the psalm I've gone to more than anything else. That must be a good psalm. to go for with children, maybe half term. Maybe half term is a time for families, crazy thought, to learn Psalm 121. I just want to cover the story so far in 1 minute, because we're about to go into breakout groups. So we have looked at the Bible's upside down fountain, where the Bible people start with the apostles and the prophets and suck up the parents and the leaders and the children so that God's family is equipped for works of service. We are in that upside down fountain. We've seen how that means we are about people more than we are about events. And we've seen how that means we are intentional with parents. If we are in this room, then that means we are the ones who are most likely to talk to parents of Jesus and discipling their children. It's what they expect from us. I learned that from a vicar. He understood he had to be the one to walk up to people in church and say, where are you at with Jesus? He found it awkward. He knew he was the only one in the church who could do it. We are the only ones in our churches who can walk up to parents and say, how are your children? How are they getting on with Christ? How can we help? How can we love you? How can we as a church love you? Okay, we're going to go to the breakout groups now. My suggestion is you simply tell each other, have you heard something you loved? Have you got a question? Start with the question freely. Tell each other where you're stuck. Tell each other where the problem is. Tell each other how this won't work. Okay? Thank you. To our, let's briefly try and experiment with the chaos. Does someone, please do be brave. Does anyone just want to unmute and just share with us a thought, a discussion, a question, a conclusion, not necessarily to answer it, but just to hear what other people are thinking and saying?
Oh, we're all
go, Amy.
We had a great question in our group, which didn't come from me. Nay, would you ask that question?
Yeah, of course I would. We were just saying, in the whole arena of engaging with parents and partnering with parents, how do we specifically go after dads and involve them in the process as the leading person in the home to lead their children and their wives to know Jesus?
Thanks, Ned.
That was the kind of question we were asking.
Great. In 5 words or less, does anyone want to just offer? We could have a torrent of ideas, very brief. Does anyone just want to have a go at giving Nay the beginning of something their church has considered?
Ed, we could just ask more people to put it in the chat.
Oh, well done. Well done, Amy. Everyone is there. There we go. Some people are commenting. Thank you. Brilliant. For myself, I am a fan of camping trips, dads and their kids. I think the message that sends is it's outdoors, it's not intense, it's relaxed. I know lots of mums love camping too, so we've got that new problem of do we throw that open to everyone? How do we involve those without a dad who wants to come? People, there we go.
Just clarify, it's not intense or it's not intense.
Ah, nice, Amy. Thank you. Thank you. We've got people typing into the chat. This is working, Amy. Your idea was better than mine. Thank you. Victoria, you were about to speak.
Yeah, in our group, we loved what Amy said about focusing on people rather than events. And we were discussing ways in which we can delegate and automate the not people part of our job so that we can do the human part of our job that we're really good at and that we're kind of called to do and where we want to focus our time. So we had a lady in our group who's got a website called churchbuilder.co.uk, and they have software and systems and training to help with automating stuff that really shouldn't take you a long time. And I know as a creative person, I have to spend a lot of time doing something that for someone else is really simple and quick or could just be done with a computer. Thanks, Katie, for putting that link's in the chat now. So yeah, we were kind of sharing ideas and also having somebody who's your admin person, who somebody in our group said they had somebody who just did the rotas for them, who came alongside them as a youth worker and just organised the rotas, which we thought was fab.
There is someone in this group now who I remember being in a room with them when they said out loud, does that mean I don't have to cut out the crafts? I don't have to sharpen the pencils. And we all looked at her and said, absolutely. You are the most gifted person in your church for helping us love one another, show kids the Bible. Why would you be the one to sharpen pencils and cut out crafts? I hope that person, I'm not going to name them, but I hope they no longer cut out crafts and they've found that group of people who long to cut out crafts. One more from a group, something that was said, something that was asked, something that was interesting.
I'll go.
Okay.
We were talking about how we love the idea of engaging parents and thinking about how do you then do that and how do you balance helping them with sounding like you're telling them what to do, and thinking about building relationships with parents being one of the things that helps there, which is maybe easier in smaller churches, more challenging in bigger churches. And so we hadn't really got past that point, but just thinking that how do we seek to do that better as part of what we're doing.
Brilliant. Thank you, Candy, for sharing that. There is obviously a frustration that these questions are brilliant and we can't possibly tackle them now, but thank you just for sharing the question. That must be a great start in thinking about it. This is too much fun. People keep typing into the chat. One more. This was too much fun to stop there. One more question or thought from a group. One more insight. One more thing someone said. One more moment of anger. Have we got anything? We've had enough.
I've got one.
Oh, go, Nicola.
I was just in our group, I was just thinking how we're all in very different contexts. For some people, it may be the case that not through your own choice, you feel like your church hasn't done very much this year and you really are starting from scratch. And I know in my context, we've got a senior minister who is absolutely like, anything we can do, let's just do it, which is a great attitude, but also it can feel overwhelming. So I think it's just to know that the context God's put you in is the one where he wants you to be, and that's okay. And don't compare, sorry, it's slightly off point, but don't compare yourself to other people, but just be encouraged that you're where you're meant to be.
Nicola, that's not off point. I'm so grateful for you saying that. I'm absolutely certain we need to hear that it's linked to what we just heard from Amy, the paranoia of filling a schedule to justify our worth and our roles. To say, Nicola, we're in a place with our unique skills and gifts. How can we serve and still be serving next year?
Yeah.
One church leader has said to me, he's going to take a much longer summer than normal because he thinks next year is going to be very hard. What a wise thing to have concluded. Thanks, Nicola, very much. We are now going to take a 5-minute break. My clock says 11:08. We're coming back. We're back. Thank you. I hope you've got your coffee. I hope you've run around your flat in a rush. There we go. We're in. Well done. These suggestions are brilliant. They're coming into the chat. Anita, I hope we can record these. We've got great book suggestions. We've got this lovely suggestion of this is the week when we're allowed to visit homes. So is this the week when we just start to visit two families a week, 3 families a week? I always used to think kids' tea was the ideal time when there's never quite enough hands to go round. And if you play your cards right, you get a plate of beans on toast. But could this be the week for that? Great. We have now got something different. My friend Matt is with us. Matt, do you want to unmute yourself?
Hello.
Matt is the guy I go to for bouncy castles, bright lights, PA equipment, and all sorts of things. Matt's embarrassed now because he doesn't like renting out bouncy castles to people. He's now gone higher brow. Matt, just tell us, where are you sat? What do you do?
Oh, that's it. Hi. Yes, I'm Matt, everyone. I've just joined, so nice to meet you all. Hello, Amy. I can see you clapping. I run a company called Clownfish Events. I'm sat in my office in Chessington in Surrey.
Thank you. Can you tell us, Matt, how your last year has been?
Yes. Primarily, we've been training for 12 years, and in the last sort of 5 or 6, we transitioned to be a corporate events company. And with the pandemic, effectively, the last sort of decade of what we had been doing was made illegal overnight, and still is, arguably. I.e., what we do is bring people together, particularly kind of colleagues, for conferences or team building or parties. And so all that work just disappeared. And in 2020, there were 11 of us full-time with relatively chunky salaries and a fleet of vehicles and a pretty enormous building and over £1 million of stock. And it's become quite a big business. So that wasn't ideal in March 2020. And to kind of cut a slightly long story slightly shorter, and I have no idea if this is helpful because this is clearly a business, not a church, but I do think that Ed's going to try and draw some parallels.
I am.
Good, I hope you can. But we were basically forced to transition, and I didn't want to. The team here has worked pretty hard over a decade, and I'd actually just lost my dad, quite recently prior to COVID, and that played a factor in it too. I think I didn't want to lose the business too. So I think I realized quickly and early on that if we didn't transition, and pivot was seemingly the word of 2020, if we didn't pivot, I'd had nothing left. So we took a big punt, I suppose, a big gamble, which I guess is what a lot of business and I guess life is sometimes. And we invested, we borrowed £250,000, we spent £500,000, and we built a 3-story development in our building in Chessington. The top floor is a pretty state-of-the-art TV studio, and we built new offices and green rooms and dressing rooms. It's quite cool. Ed and Faith and Kids have already recorded some content in there. And I think I realized early on that, this pandemic was here to stay, and physical events weren't going to happen for a while. That was evidently correct. And so we had to transition to do online, virtual, studio-based, hybrid, there's all kinds of fancy names for them, events. So that's my year in a sentence.
So the reason I've asked Matt to come along is that in the last year, he has found that all the normal way of doing things were in bits. The way he had been filling his diary was now empty. His business was in debris. Now, we have had some of that experience as churches. The way we were doing things has stopped. We have reinvented ourselves, and we are coming out now and blinking into the daylight, wondering what has changed. I just wanted to ask Matt one question, which is, Matt, can you just tell us how you draw alongside a team as opposed to your customers? Because if we're in this room now, a lot of us lead teams, or at least we influence others. And I just wanted to speak to you about influencing the small number, training the small number instead of going after the mass of customers. How do you do it, and why do you do it?
Yeah, interesting. It's something Richard Branson kind of coined relatively early on in his career, and he's an entrepreneur I sort of follow. He always said, put your customer second, and put your staff members first. And I thought, and that when he said that 20 years ago, it was quite controversial, because clearly the narrative in consumer land is the consumer is the most important thing. Put them first, everything else comes second. And he was the first to say publicly, with the kind of profile, actually, no, that's the wrong order. If you put your team first, your staff first, that's my priority, is Richard Branson, and everything else second, and it'll follow. And clearly the connection is, I think it's clear to me anyway, that actually by doing that in that order, you're actually indirectly looking after your team in a much greater, your customers in a much greater sense. I think I follow that sort of conviction. I guess we've always been small. I was a one-man band when I was 18, 19 and 20. Then we were 2, 3, 4, 5. We got to 15 at one point. It was crazy. But ultimately in the real world in London, we're still a small business. And I think I realized early on, if I wanted to reach big numbers, which I did, and I wanted, when I was a young, foolish child at 18 or 19, I wanted to be London's leading event company. And I still do. And we're not, whatever. And I think I realized early on that, I couldn't do that by myself. That's not scalable. I am limited to one man, clearly and evidently. And I think someone described to me once as, if I invested into lots of megaphones, and that's a great, I think, term for this, lots of little megaphones, and by megaphones, I mean team, then it's not just me shouting about it. It's not just me doing it. I have 1, 2, 5, 10 ambassadors, if you like. So I think I've always, I'm sure I get this wrong, but I've always tried to disproportionately spend time with team first, and everything else second. And actually, I dare I say, it's kind of worked for us. It was the kind of greatest thing I think I've ever done, really. And an example of that is, that we have a youngest person here is 19 years old, and he joined us 2 years ago. And, when he came, if I'm honest, he was a little rough around the edges, and he got his tenses wrong. His English wasn't very good, but I saw something in him, I think, that was, this guy has got a really technical brain, which really suits our sort of technical work. And there was something I thought he's not the finished article today. And actually, the truth is, it's almost impossible to hire the finished article. That will never happen. We're all fallen, So, but there was something in him I thought was really interesting. And I think I spent an absurd amount of time pre-pandemic and during pandemic buying him dinner, sitting down with him, and I mean hours. The painful part of correcting his tenses in team meetings and slightly embarrassing him in a nice way. And I have to say, he's a great example of someone who now, 2 weeks ago, he at 19 years old, he drives to Aviva in central London, one of our big corporate clients. And I trust him completely and entirely to go and lead a team in a filming project there. And that's incredible. And from a commercial point of view, that's amazing value. And I don't think, that's what I have to do at scale. I have to basically, on a peak day, there has to be 10 of me out in London and Surrey dealing with clients, and that could never happen at the kind of level that I would want if I didn't almost disproportionately spend time with trying to build, grow, develop, and embed trust, empower, all those kind of words into people.
Matt, my final question. You're looking at a group of people, and I don't think we need to have a show of hands to know. They all wish they had more people in their teams. They all wish they had people knocking on their doors saying, I'm so inspired by what you are doing with children and families. Can I do more? We all wish that. And we also, probably the people in this room, are the people who are best in their churches at doing it. So to train others feels like I'm being delayed from doing that God-given task I've got. If I spend time with a team, less children get me, less families get me. So how do you fight that urge of, I'm wasting time, I don't have the people, if I just got on and did this, I'd probably get further, or I don't even have a choice? Tell me, Matt, what you say to yourself in those moments.
Yes, I fight that a lot, and I've often got it wrong, and there are often people who are actually no good. And actually, no matter how much time I give, they are just not right for this role. Actually, if your heart or your mentality isn't in it, I'm kind of fighting a dead something or other. So I look, the grass is always greener, isn't it? It's always easy to think, that wouldn't this be easier if, if only there was another person just like me. And the reality is, again, it's just not going to happen. So I think the first thing I try to do is realize it ain't ever going to be perfect. This side of heaven, we have to, as Christians, accept that clearly. It's not going to be perfect, especially dealing with human beings. And so once I get over that, I've kind of lowered my benchmark slightly. And I think, okay, cool. Well, I have to make the best of what I have. And if I'm really honest, when I lived at home and I worked at home, I was 20 years old, I had one employee and I could barely afford him, and he wasn't brilliant. And it was so stressful, because actually we were starting to get some interesting work come in, and I just thought we couldn't really deliver it in the way I wanted to. And even 5 years in, we're just not, arguably we've always been short-staffed. We've never had enough people. It's part of small business. It's part of the craziness of trying to, I guess, run a kids team or a small business. I think it's quite similar. But I think I have to accept they are what I have. I've trusted them, they've trusted me. It's my duty, it's my job. I see it as a big part of my job to do that. And I think long-term all the time. I think it's a short gain or a short-term win if I ignore them and go and deal with the big customer myself. Because I'm pretty sure and I'm pretty confident in myself that I can go and do that job probably slightly better, slightly quicker, because I'm more experienced at it. That's what I know to be true. But that's not the long-term goal. And the long-term goal for me commercially is actually not to the whole thing to rely on my shoulders only. And so if I'm in it for the long run, and for me that's now been 12 years, then it's my option. And I remind myself of that all the time. And it is difficult. And I have definitely employed people that are wrong for the job, that have messed it up.
Let's not finish there, Matt. Let's not finish there. Let's stick with your inspiring 17-year-old who now goes to Aviva. And let me just briefly say, Matt, I don't mean to discourage you, but what the people in this room have that you don't have is a promise from the Lord that he is putting their church together exactly as he needs it to be to do his task. So sadly, Matt, I cannot promise Clownfish has exactly what you need, but we have. Matt, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a great pleasure to have you. Hang around a bit. People might type in some questions for you in the chat.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Stu is just going to unmute himself. Stu is I'll ask Stu to tell us. Stu, where are you? What do you do? Tell us a bit about that.
I'm down in Exeter and I lead a church called Grace Church, Exeter.
Thank you, Stu. And briefly, Stu, what's been the story of Grace Church? Tell us a bit about your families and how it's gone this year.
So our church was a church plant when I was at university and attracted a lot of students and young people. Those people have stayed and have families and babies. And so we have a couple of hundred adults. And I think at the moment we have about 130 children. I think maybe there's 5 due this month in one community group. So the founding pastor spent a lot of time doing marriage prep with people, and perhaps now we're living into the blessing of that, but it's pretty crazy.
Thank you, Stu. Stu, the reason I've asked you to come on is this room is mainly those who lead children's ministry or play some part in it. And it is fairly common that we hear, Ed, the vision we have doesn't quite match with the vision the church leader has for our kids and youth. I just wanted to hear from a church leader how you see children's ministry. And maybe as you answer, you might just give us a hand with how we talk this through with our church leaders.
Yeah, sure. So I've put a couple of thoughts together around the question, what is children's ministry? So if I give you 2 thoughts. The first one, my first answer is it's redeeming the formational power of family. It's redeeming the formational power of family. But when Chloe and I were been leading the church for a while, and we started to recognize that we needed a deeper sense of pastoral care if we're going to go after transformation in people. So we consulted with some people who do prayer ministry. We got good references from them, other churches use, and we thought they'd be great people to go to. They said, if you want us to help you go for deep transformation, you should come and receive counseling and prayer ministry with us first, so that you know what you're unleashing onto the church. So we kind of, in a moment of like, yeah, that'd be pretty good for the church, and we get to know a little bit, we signed up. So we naively went across for prayer ministry and counseling, and we had 4 sessions of reflecting, opening up questions, crying, healing, prayer, stuff that we didn't even know was there, right the way back to childhood, the way we interpreted things our parents had done, the way early experiences have shaped us. And what we realized was that much of our behaviors and our pressures in marriage was fruit, or had grown out of seeds that were sown in our early years. You'll know this if you have been involved with any sort of adoption process. All the attachment theory, all the foundational pieces of character formation happen with children. And so as we've looked for more pastoral resources, what we've been drawn back to again and again is that children's ministry, the formation of young people and harnessing the flow of family, is the key strategic piece. Here's a quote from Ronald Rollheiser. This is for our church at the moment. Loads of people in midlife now in that sort of tension. He says this: sometimes in midlife, during our 30s, our wounds begin to break through and create a certain amount of drama inside us. Our wounds begin to break through. And that's what I'm pastoring at the moment. So if you want to motivate your church leader to invest in children's ministry, tell them that the wounds that they're trying to pastor now are the things that are being created in families right now. Let's go to the source of it. Let's sow into families now, so that the issues that you're dealing with are not replicated again. It will save us all a lot of problems if we, I guess, keyed into the way that God forms people through the life of family. And it happens negatively and positively. Like I would say that, through my family story, my dad's kind of gifting around focus and drive and making things happen is something which I just instinctively have in me. My wife's incredibly flexible, hospitable, pastoral, and it's just the same gift mix as her mum. It's just been passed on. We know we didn't choose that, we didn't vote that way, but here we are living out of the blessing that we've been given. And I guess, and this is a quote that Ed would often say, Proverbs 22 says, train up the child in the ways of the Lord and the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And I just think that's wired into us so powerfully. And so for me, I think children's ministry is about trying to redeem the formational power of family, which is just flowing on a daily basis. And as a church, you're trying to say, how do we influence that flow? How do we make sure that's full of the Holy Spirit, for the grace of Christ, with the empathy, skills, compassion, et cetera, to make that a healthy and wholesome and lasting experience? So I think that's the first thing I would say. What is children's ministry? And I think that's where I would go if I was with you or speaking to other leaders who don't understand that children's ministry is not a bolt-on. You don't want a room and a budget and a staff member. What you want is the heart, the appreciation of the challenge, the complexity. You know, the way you're trying to form parents to help them form their kids is an enormous challenge, but well worth taking on. I think if we take the scriptures seriously, and if we look at how people are formed today, I think everything points in that direction from my perspective. We've got time for another thought, Ed. I see you.
Please give us another thought, Stu. Please do.
So my second thought is, so if the first one is redeeming the formational power of family, which is flowing every day, and we want to try and influence that for good. My second thought is children's ministry is about resourcing Daniels. It's about resourcing Daniels. When I came to faith as a student, I came to a church that was like a kind of reformed, charismatic. Like I love a big vision of God. I love experiencing the presence of God in the moment. I nearly went to a different kind of church, but this is where I went. But I was secular, so I was thinking, this is great, but this makes no sense to my friends whatsoever. I spent most of my time thinking, how do I reinterpret that? Or like, how could our tone change just to kind of give more of the heart of the gospel, rather than like what you're saying is not what's being heard. And I spent loads of time thinking about how does the message given make sense to not only the sender but the hearer. Like, what is contextualization? Stumbled across Tim Keller's stuff, just absolutely loved it. It was like, oh, you know, there's a whole thing around this, like cross-cultural mission, that sort of thing, whatever. So I was kind of doing that. My master's was around like Gen Z, kind of my generation. And then I was at a conference with just a small conference, and Rachel Gardner was talking about how cross-cultural mission and contextualization and Tim Keller's stuff should be applied into youth ministry as well, not only in terms of reaching secular people, but reaching young people. And I kind of thought there's a huge thing for me, because for me, that's bringing together my passion for young people. You know, we've got 4 kids of our own, a church of over 100 young people under the age of 11, 130 and counting. This whole cross-cultural thing has been a big part of my ministry. I started to think about and read about the differences between the generations in their experience. And I guess, like you, I've kind of landed on the things around sexuality and technology as being like markers of how culture has changed. Like my son, in his, like a third of his friends won't just be like, yeah, I'm straight. And so a third of his friends will be questioning stuff about their sexual identity and orientation as just norm. Like, I wasn't raised in that environment. Like, that's not my experience. My experience was very different to that. And so I started to realize the way that I talk about things and how I talk about things with my kids needs to, they're in a different world. So how would I resource a Daniel? He's not in Jerusalem, he's in Babylon. Every day, depending on your sort of Christian ethics, mine would be sort of historic Orthodox, he's going to be confronted by a different set of presuppositions. How do I train him as a missionary? And of course, there's also the technology piece in there as well, which I think is a piece about culture as much as about the kind of infrastructure, in as much as habits, ways of communication, emotional resilience, how you read people skills, how you build relationships. I mean, they're being asked out on WhatsApp. So there's boys and girls asking each other out before they've met each other. I said to him, mate, in my day, you had to have the courage to speak to somebody. You might then ask for their number.
You had to cross the school hall.
Right, exactly. School disco, mate, that was it.
That meant none of us did.
With your Panda Pops.
That's right.
I mean,
Stu, just pause a minute. Pause a minute. The first point you're telling us is that we in this room have the power to be a part of redeeming families.
Yes.
Fixing families. That means we have a part to play in helping mums and dads to see that the gospel is the way to fix their families best?
Yeah, I think you're flavoring the water. I think I'd see it like a rushing river that's flowing every day anyway. Like the formational power of families is just wired into us.
Okay.
Your job is to try and flavor that with the gospel. It's
Okay.
it's happening for,
So what our families are hearing is their kids need education. Their kids need meditation. Their kids need controlled screen time. Their kids need grandparents. Their kids need a community. We in this room are those who are saying, in ways our families can understand, let's help you to see how the gospel, Jesus Christ, can work through the current cause of the tears and difficulty in your family. And you as a church leader are totally for us in that. Now, I'm going to save the second point because, again, in the perfection of our planning, we're coming on to how do we raise our children to be Daniels, to speak the gospel into an alien culture. One question, Stu, before you leave. Can you just tell me, as some of us knock on the door of our church leaders to say there is a way forward here that isn't maybe the way we've done it in the past, can you just give us one piece of advice for how we have that conversation so that we are heard, so that we play a part in change?
I think
how would you love people to knock on your door? How does your kids worker knock on your door and get it right and have that conversation with you, Stu?
It's difficult to answer because I feel a personal sense of calling as well as my circumstances are quite unique. But I think I would encourage you to connect the pain of pastoral ministry and the felt need of the pastor with what's happening in the kids group in that moment, and try and connect that to as best you can.
So we're trying to help the pastor to see how his difficulties, her difficulties, his problems, her problems relate to what the solutions you're offering.
Yeah.
How can we be a part of helping the pastor with children's ministry, families ministry, which must be possible because we are for families and the pastor is for families. Okay, Stu, thank you very much. Type in your questions. Stu and Matt will be here for 10 more minutes or so. So if there's just something you wanted to say to them, something you wanted to ask them, you can type that into the chat. That Stu finished with, can we raise up our children to reach their generation because they understand their generation? Paula is going to tell us more about that. Paula, can you unmute yourself and speak to us about that? Are you there? Earth calling Paula. Are you unmuted? Paula's going to log back in. Paula's on her way back in. That's perfect. There's no problem. So in that case, I'll just check the chat. Paula will be with us in 3 seconds. We have, Sarah, thank you. We are all doing the same thing. These conversations with our church leadership teams, we all want to have brothers and sisters who are trusting.
Yeah.
Paula,
can you hear me, Ed?
Can. Paula, off you go. Thank you. Great to see you.
I like to make an entrance, apparently. Yeah, great. Thank you. So I'm going to be talking a bit more about outreach within children's ministry. And we're thinking about that because, if a child really loves something, they want their friends to experience it too. I mean, I know that from when I was growing up and I was at church, I loved church. I don't know if it was because my mum and all my aunts were Sunday school leaders. I felt like, kind of belonged there. All my cousins were there. So it was a really great place, a really great experience. And even at that age, I knew that I had Jesus, and I knew that my friends who didn't go to church needed Jesus. And I wanted them to experience it because I loved it. I loved going to church. So I would get them to sleep over on a Saturday night because then I knew you can come to church with me on Saturday morning. This is great. So I didn't know that was outreach. I didn't know that was evangelism, but I knew that I loved being there. and I wanted them to experience it. I knew that I had Jesus and they didn't, but they needed Jesus. And I knew that at church, they would be told about Jesus. So what a great place to take them to. And, I was chatting to my mom about this last night, and on the flip side, we only went to church because my brother had kind of gone a few times. We'd gone if our cousins had invited us, and he wanted to go back. So he's the one who asked her and said, can you take us to church? And that is the church my mom became a Christian at. So, there really is something about with children, if they love something, they want friends to experience it. They're going to beg parents. I'm sure you've all been begged by your child to do something or take them somewhere because they really, really, really want to do it. And within children's ministry, we really can make the most of that. I'm sure you've all had a child come to Sunday school or an event where they have brought a friend. So we have this great opportunity to reach out to unreached children through these relationships that the children in your church have with others. And so I think, I'm quite convinced of this because I've seen it growing up, and I've seen it when I was working as a children's worker as well, that this is just an excellent way to bring in the unreached. And so if you are convinced of that, and if you do see within your children's ministry, we've heard so much today about we want to give people Jesus. We want to give them people. We want to partner with parents. We've heard so much about how we can start afresh. But as we do this, let's also keep in our minds that a large part of your ministry is outreach. And where we don't want to land with that is just, right, you now need to plan 100 events. That is not where we're going. What we're trying to say is, what is the one thing you can do, or how are you making sure that you are planning and prioritizing outreach as part of what you are doing within your ministry? And maybe that is just within your Sunday school. Do you make sure that you have a clear gospel message? Is it a welcoming environment? Are you following up with visitors? And the way to do that is following up through families. Who invited that person? They are the way that you are going to link up with that person. And maybe it does look like providing another opportunity for children to be invited to. But I think also there's the joy of the boldness of children. When I would invite my friends to come to church with me, I didn't fear that they suddenly wouldn't be my friend. I know this was 25 years ago. But I knew that they might say to me, I don't want to come back to that. But because we had that friendship, I knew that I could say, this is what I believe, and I want you to enjoy this with me. If you don't come back, it's fine, but I know you're going to be my friend. I know that's not always the case, but there is a real boldness about children where they will speak about what they believe. And I think working in a school, I saw that, where it was normal for children to say, oh, I believe this, oh, I believe that. And they spoke about it quite openly. And so that is a real joy, that actually the children that we're working with, they are the ones who we can encourage them to be having the conversations with their friends, with their peers, and openly talk about what they believe. So thinking also then about events, how you might do this. We've been trying to say, don't overload your ministry with events. So with the events you are going to run, make them sustainable, make it something that is fun and exciting, but everything to be centered around how you are going to give them Jesus. That is our main priority. Can you make it an evangelistic event? Because if friends are being invited, you need to assume that there is little or no Bible knowledge. You're coming at them as if they are a clean sheet of paper. And you're thinking, how am I going to tell you about this person that you've maybe never heard of? We can't just assume that they know anything about Jesus. And so I was thinking about this and thinking, this is great, isn't it? If we're really sold on this, that there is this kind of like pot of gold of unreached children, that we can get to, who then not get to, but who we can make links with and show them Jesus, who then open up us being able to also get alongside their families. How do we do this? And we've spoken a lot about partnering with parents. And so also what we really need to be doing as well is partnering with, oh no, where's my thing gone? Sorry, this is not going well. There we are. Okay, I shall share screen again, and now I've got lost. I'm being as good as Ed is. Normally takes a good minute or two to do his screen share. Okay, so how are we going to get to the pot of gold? Obviously, this is our picture of the enthusiastic children's worker, because we're all that excited, I'm pretty sure, when we stand up and tell people about Jesus. And here are our children who we can reach. But the only way we're going to get to them is through the bridge of families. So as we partner with parents in helping them disciple their children, we can also partner with parents and families in saying, who are your neighbors? Who are the children who are your children friends with? So who are they at school with? Who are the families that you talk to when you wait to pick up your child from swimming club or hockey practice or football or whatever it is? The families are the ones who have those links. Maybe they are just kind of shallow conversations at the school gate, but now if you give them an event or something, they are the ones who can say, right, we've got this event at church. It only happens X number of times a year or X number of times a month. Your families are the ones who are going to sell whatever it is that you're doing. And they are the ones who are the bridge between you being able to invite those people within your community to get them into your church. So that is the role of the families. As you think of evangelism in children's ministry, this isn't just you on your own. It's how can you partner with the families so that they can be the ones who are selling whatever it is you're putting on, so that they can help you to reach those unreached children. And then it also gives them opportunities to have deeper conversations with the families, with the parents, so that no longer just having conversations about how's your day been, are you surviving? Now you might have better opportunities to get into deeper conversations as you say to them, oh yeah, had any interesting conversations with your child since they heard about Noah's Ark at the kids club yesterday? So you can start to go deeper. So I realize I'm talking for too long, and mostly what I really want to show you is a brilliant way that you can do this, where you can be thinking about outreach within your ministry as an event. And we have put together a resource. I'm just going to caveat that this is not a COVID compliant. Hand sanitizer is mentioned a few times, but it ultimately does not feature in a huge way. This is not necessarily written to be socially distanced. This is written with the dream of one day we will meet together again and we will be able to have fun and be given Jesus and shown Jesus. And so just bear that in mind, and let's just dream the dream together as we think about Dangerous Club. It is a package of resources that tell you everything you need to know. There is a whole document that basically says, like, what is this club and how do I do it? And so we tell you, this is how you can set it up. This is how you can get families involved so they can be intentional. This is how you can get your leaders involved. This is how you can plan it and think about a teaching program. Everything that you need is in that document. It is a monthly club because quality is not easy to do every week. Rather do something that is sustainable and once a month and really quality and kids look forward to. It's for 8 to 11-year-olds because they're getting that little bit older. They're not yet in youth, but they want to be treated differently to the younger children. And everything within each set of resources for that month club is focused around showing them Jesus. So with the teaching program, it's as if you were saying, these children don't even know who Jesus is. Let's introduce them to him. So we have 10 resources. We assume that there will be 2 months, probably like Easter holidays and summer holidays. You probably won't run a club that month, but here are 10 talks and 10 activity plans. We want to show you, who is Jesus? Why did he come? Why is Jesus worth following? And in each set, you'll find a talk and an activity plan. And I'm now going a bit quickly because I think I need to wrap this up. So here's your activity plan. Oh, sorry, this is discussion questions, because discussion is a great part of this. We don't want to just tell the children about Jesus and then leave them to be confused or have lots of questions. We want to be able to sit with them after the talk and talk to them about what they've just heard and ask them, what is it you believe? Why do you believe that? What do you think about this Jesus person that we've heard of? And then activities, because who doesn't love fun? It's not really dangerous. It's only dangerous if you don't risk assess anything, but then actually it's not really dangerous. But we all have a bit of fun, don't we? And we all need some fun, and our kids need fun, but more importantly, they need Jesus. So this is a great way to give them Jesus, a lot of Jesus and a lot of fun. Obviously, when we write our resources, we write them saying we really want to help you as much as we possibly can. But you are the best people to know how to shape this around the group that you have, the children you have, restrictions that might still be in place when you are doing this. So you might be thinking, I'm ready for this. Yes, I want to give people Jesus. I want to partner with parents. I want to do all those things. But also, I'd quite like to run maybe one event because I can reach all of these children that I've just heard of. Go to our website, faithinkids.org. Literally, if you scroll down, it's still on the latest resources and you can find it right there. Otherwise, if you search under the holiday clubs or in the search bar, just search Dangerous Club and it will come up. And it's brilliant. It's a great way for you to be able to have some fun, have a lot of Jesus with the kids and the children of your community. So Ed, I'm going to hand over to you because I'm now
thank you very much.
Too long.
We're going to our last breakout group. So we have in this last session heard from Matt about growing strong teams rather than us being solely focused on the parents and the ministry. Can we make it a team responsibility so we reach more, go further, even with the cost? We spoke with Stu about speaking to church leaders about a vision of children's ministry where it is essential. It is essential for the church because families can be put back together and our culture can be reached. And then we've heard from Paula a bit about how we do that culture reaching. How do we empower families to reach our communities? Because we can't. I know some of you have got to go. This is the last breakout time. Then we'll wrap up when we're finished. It could be the one question you want to answer is there one question to take away and ponder further? Is there one question from today you want to think more about? We're going to go to a breakout group. Final minute. I know that many people will have things to do right now. If you have to leave right now, we totally understand. Thank you for having us. I just wanted to finish just telling you what's next, what to look forward to, what to book into, and to obviously thank you very much. So just perhaps the usual things, if you've been with us before, we've talked a lot about parent partnership and empowering others. We have podcasts that we think are our sort of first stop. We have two types of podcasts. On the one for families, which we call Faith in Kids. You can search for all of these just by typing in Faith in Kids, all one word, anywhere where you get a podcast. You'll find there's some for the whole family, and you'll also find some for just parents. So they are trying to equip parents on a range of topics to give them that, what is it to raise children to know Christ as the one who is the rock. This is our website. Paula showed it to you. At the moment, the headline is The Dangerous Club. At the top, you can see there a link to the podcast on that top row. You can click resources, which are mainly aimed at people like you. So most of our free downloadable resources are for use in churches. That's who they're aimed at. You'll also find a donate button. £20 a month, £5 a month makes a huge difference to us to grow. We're a young organisation. We're trying to do more because we see the need. Partner with us in that. Part of that partnership is this one. Are you the leader of children's ministry in your church? And have you told us that? We are trying to create a network of those leaders of children's ministry. So if you could just email us with your name, your church and your postal address to info@faithinkids.org. If you've done that, it's okay. You may not have heard from us since the last one, but occasionally, maybe once a year, we try and post something out to you with the next resource. We want to give that to you free into your hands to see if you can use it. And then finally, the next time we think we can see you is the 17th of June, same time, planning your way out of lockdown. I do want to tell you now, we don't have all the solutions, but we do have a resource to give you. We do have a way we are thinking about how we can partner with you, how we can equip your church, your family, your children to come out of the difficulties of lockdown. There isn't just how do we meet together, but as we come back, there is regret, there is anger, there is frustration, there is sadness, there is grieving. This year is not going to be, let's all meet together and off we go. So we want to help you think a bit about that. That's what we're going to be doing next time for you or someone else. We always want to hear how you found it. We wish we could now gather for a biscuit and a cup of tea and hear what we should have done better. info@faithinkids is the place to tell us what we did right, what we did badly, what should we have done, what must we do next time. I wish I could chat. You don't. You would like to go. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm still sharing my screen. No, I'm not. Am I? Oh dear, that's awful. You can just leave while I understand how Zoom works.